Premier League football is back. We were mightily close last year. It's been a long summer to get over that. Let's not have a season like that again, please, Saints. But welcome along to our big match build-up show. Doing things just a little bit differently this year in a long-form content. And this episode will be available to download, to listen on the go at your own leisure. So this week's show is packed with all kinds of things. Look out for my chat with Clive as we look ahead to this Sunday's curtain raiser here at St Mary's with a visit of Burnley. And I also get the chance to speak to the Burnley podcast, No Nay Never, to tell us all about what to expect from the Clarets this weekend in the midst of their European qualification. Also, you can find out how you can get match day deals with our friends at the Five Rivers Pub shortly in the show. So do sit back, listen, watch, let us know what you think of the long form content, and on with the show. So welcome along to this part of the show, our big match preview. Back at the Five Rivers, Naz featured in our previous video earlier this week. We have sorted you all out with match day deals down here, Five Rivers. We've been down here a few times, Clive. An excellent pub.
Excellent pub. Sizzlers, well worth getting your gnashers round. And some decent beer to be had. So, yeah, and probably less than 15-minute walk to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And
not the closest, but it's not too far, is it, across the rail tracks?
Yeah, it's an alternative pub, and we've sorted you out with some match day deals. Usually, they have happy hour deals from Monday through to Thursday, 5 till 7. But for exclusive Ugly Inside followers, viewers, all you need to do is show our social post at the bar, and you can get match day deals. So that's £2.50 on Foster's, John Smith's, Strongbow, and double house shots.
So how do they show the social post?
So all you need to do is just take your phone to the bar, show them, say, look, I'm a follower, I'm a subscriber.
Oh, to the Ugly of the Ugly, right?
And then the bar stuff will give you a match day discount. Right. So Burnley then. Opening weekend of the season, we're hoping for some glorious sunshine
to make them feel unlike home.
Yeah, it's cold every time we go to Lancashire. Burnley come to St Mary's at 1:30 kickoff. Of course, they are playing in Europa League on Thursday night. This has been recorded before then, so we still don't know the results unless we are Mystic Meg.
Whatever way you look at it, should be a major advantage to Saints, because not only is it a game in the Europa, it's an away game, and almost as far as you can have to travel, to be honest, Istanbul. So major advantage, Saints, in that respect.
Of course, we've touched upon it in our season preview. We've talked about our pre-season. Was it 3 wins, 1 draw and 2 losses? Are we in optimum shape to start the Premier League campaign?
Forget the friendlies. Forget it. Now's the real action. Now's when it really matters, and now's when Saints have got to knuckle down and do the business.
The business starts on Sunday, lunchtime. And, again, the fixtures are favourable for Saints. We said it last season, first 6 fixtures. I think our toughest tie, let's say, comes around the end of September against Liverpool. So Burnley at home, we need to take some points.
Need to take some points, and it'd be so nice just to start a season with a win and get the pressure off our backs and get some home wins this season. The record last season was just appalling, so it would be good to get that record put to bed, and a really good chance. Yeah,
so I would say that Burnley have been playing Europa League. Perhaps they are a week or 2 ahead of our schedule in terms of fitness. They've also had to play, another round of Europa League against Aberdeen. Going to extra time as well, and they've also got a bit of a crisis between the sticks.
You could look at that as an advantage or a disadvantage, because they picked a few knocks up along the way. It's tough for them, especially the goalkeeping position.
You would think that Nick Pope will be out for, I think they say 6 months. Tom Heaton won't be fit. They might be relying on Anders Lindegaard, or even Joe Hart might.
Yeah, Joe Hart possibly.
Playing.
They've been a tough nut to crack, Burnley, the last few seasons. They're always defensively well organised, manager with a lot of common sense, gets the very, very best out of his players. So despite the advantage of the Europa game, it's going to be a tough I think it's going to be a dour encounter?
Well, the last two fixtures, it was 1-0 to Burnley at home. A Sam Vokes free header sneaking in between Yoshida and Stevens, and the return leg in freezing cold Burnley in, was it February?
February, I believe.
February.
Yeah.
Couldn't feel your fingers.
No.
We'll have none of that this weekend.
No.
It's so cold here, mate. My fingers, they're like icebergs. They're like absolute icebergs.
Well, weather's irrelevant. I think that Saints should approach this game positively and go for it. Although Burnley are very good at soaking up pressure and then hitting you on the counter. So maybe Mr. Hughes might be a little bit more conservative to start with and then build the pressure as the game goes on.
Yeah, well, the goals came from it was Ashley Barnes scored at Turf Moor.
Yeah.
And Sam Vokes at St
Aberdeen.
Mary's.
Against us.
Yeah,
yes,
against us last season.
Yeah.
So those two obviously big targets to neutralise.
Yeah, I watched them the other night against Aberdeen and I was very impressed with Ashley Barnes. His movement's very good. A decent goal. Got a couple of shots off in the box. He gets away. He gets into spaces. So that's the sign of an intelligent player.
Chris Wood, we also have to think about too.
Chris Wood, yeah, it'd be interesting to know what his injury was against Aberdeen and whether he'll feature against Saints, because obviously they've got the trip to Istanbul as well before that. As well, I was very impressed with Jack Cork, our old player in midfield. I thought he really was very calm when under pressure, because they were expected to win that game, and it was a real slug out for them, wasn't it? It went to extra time, which again was probably good for Saints, but I know the game's a long way off from that, but it all adds.
Yeah, and more about our preparations, really. I mean, last season we failed to deal with a physical, strong centre forward. This year we've now got 6'7" giant Yannick Vestergaard commanding that defence.
Yeah, you'd like to think that that's a problem solved, Freddie, and that's why they've bought him. What pace have they got? Well, Aaron Lennon, our fullbacks, really is going to be a tough one to choose from, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Cedric hasn't played too much of a part. Well, none at all in pre-season.
Yeah.
It remains to be a decision on Sunday whether it be Target at right back, right wing back, or it could be Bertrand or anybody like sort of James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
Could be morphing into that kind of figure this season as a backup.
To be honest, when I saw Lennon, he looked like he was struggling a little bit, but he has been a decent player in the past, and I'd like to probably, wherever he goes, I'd like to match Bertrand up, because I think Bertie's the quickest player, and I'd like to match him up against Lennon to nullify his effect.
So we've seen a lot of tinkering from Mark Hughes over the pre-season, a lot of players getting a few minutes. We touched upon it in our season preview, but what sort of team do you think we should expect to emerge from the tunnel for the first time this season on Sunday?
Conservative, I think. Conservative with enough firepower on the bench to change the game. Although I would play Gabby up from the start. I expect the game to be tight. I expect it to be 0-0 for a long time. Please score in the first minute and prove me wrong. But
are we going to squeeze it then? Is it going to stay 0-0?
Yeah.
Or are we going to squeeze
it?
No,
I think we are going to squeeze it. I've got confidence. Let's not underestimate Burnley. They didn't get into Europe for no good reason. They got there because they're very well organised and they've got a fantastic team spirit. So we're going to have to fight fire with fire in that respect.
Excellent stuff then. So we're going for a Saints win by a single margin.
Single margin.
Single margin. We'll take that all day long, and actually to start the season with a home win.
Yeah, because I think that would change a lot of people's opinions after the meltdown on social media yesterday. I think it would give the team confidence looking forward. And I just think after last season, let's win some home games.
So those were our pre-match thoughts. Definitely didn't put enough sun cream on, sitting in the sunshine in the garden whilst we recorded that. Go ahead and leave your predicted lineups, your previews, and your predicted scorelines here on Sunday afternoon. And before we get into my chat with Natalie from the No Nay Never podcast, it's worth noting that this conversation was recorded just before Burnley had announced 3 summer signings. So we managed to get 2 of those in the conversation, but we did miss out on Vidra, their brand new striker, who may well be playing here on Sunday. So on to my chat with Natalie from the No Nay Never podcast. So I'd like to welcome along to our opposition preview part of the show where we get the chance to understand what is going on in the away end this weekend. And I'd like to welcome once again Natalie from the Burnley podcast, No, Nay, Never. Thanks for speaking to us once again. How are you doing?
We're very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
Sort of enjoying the summer. So, I mean, a lot to find out then. What with it being the start of a new campaign, a new season. But of course, Burnley, your competitive fixtures started weeks ago. First of all, talk to us about your pre-season preparations. I mean, without mentioning sort of Europa League just yet, talk us through your summer. You've had a few local games, some wins and some European competition. How has it gone overall?
It's not been too bad, really. It's been quite a strange concept for us because, as you've already said, we started really early this year. And despite the excitement of the Europa League, everybody warned us that this would be the case. And we went along blindly going, oh, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's just a pre-season. But then actually when it starts and you are back-to-back Thursdays and you're going from, I guess, just drills on grass to a really feisty competitive fixture where you've got to really up your game, it's a very weird concept. And I imagine it's weird for the players. But we've interchanged that with, like you say, a few local games. We've been across to Ireland again, which we tend to do for a bit of a tour. We've had a couple of Spanish sides at turf as well. So apart from the Europa League fixtures, our pre-season hasn't really taken that much of a different turn as it usually does. It's, you know what Sean Dyche is like. Everything is very consistent, and his approach each season is the same, regardless of the circumstances on the outside of the team. So business as usual, but just with this added factor of a few extra games that we had to think about.
Yeah, some leopards never change their stripes, right, or spots.
They don't.
Ultimately, these pre-season friendlies are fitness exercises, right? But I mean, what have you learned from pre-season? What sort of players have you seen? I mean, we'll talk about transfers later on, but what sort of squad has he used over the last few weeks?
Nothing really much to report home. We're getting Robbie Brady and Stephen Defoe back, who were both long-term injuries last season. Brady's already come back into the side and then pulled out again, which we just think is just his general return to fitness, getting those niggles out of the way until you get completely right. Stephen Defoe hasn't played, certainly not in the Europa League yet. He hasn't played significantly yet, but I do suspect that he's going to be, given that he's going to be such a key part to our Premier League campaign, that Dyche is just keeping him and giving him as long as is humanly possible. Clearly the big news, which was the horrendous one, was the injury to Nick Pope in the opening 5 minutes of the Aberdeen fixture away from home. There's been a report sent out in the Premier League this week saying that apparently Liverpool are officially the most unlucky side in the Premier League, which I cannot believe for one single second that's true. And I'm like, hang on a minute, can we maybe stake a claim for this? Because despite not having any penalties awarded to us in over a calendar year, this time last season, just in the start of the season, we lost Tom Heaton to a dislocated shoulder, which put him out of action for pretty much the entire season. And exactly 12 months later, out of nowhere, Nick Pope, following his amazing summer with the England squad, same injury, and he's now going to be out until Christmas. We're told that it was a much cleaner dislocation than Tom Heaton, so he shouldn't be out for as long as Heaton was. But suddenly, in the space of 5 minutes, we went from having a real keeper problem in who do we keep, Pope or Heaton, because we can't keep both really, to, okay, we've got a keeper crisis. So then we signed Joe Hart and decide that we're just going to collect England keepers, and we've now got 3/5 of the Lions keepers on Burnley's books. So who knows?
It's a very British core under Sean Dyche, and
really is.
Perhaps he's preparing for Brexit. But we'll talk about the Europa League before we get to transfers. You've teased it a little bit, but Europa League fixtures, the win over Aberdeen in extra time must have tested the fitness of some players, and obviously moves the Premier League fixture to Sunday, and with a trip to Istanbul before then. Talk us through your chances of going into Europa League for the first time in over 50 years.
I'm torn. Weirdly, we didn't have the kindest of fixtures. I think we all had a little bit of a laugh when the Aberdeen fixture came out. And then we all settled on I've waited my entire lifetime to see Burnley away from home in Europe, and I don't leave my own island, which is not great. But actually, from a logistics perspective, it ended up being a really great tie because it wasn't a long way to travel. It was, just up the road, very short flight. The team didn't have any jet lag to concern about or long trips. They could just go up there, get their first test in Europa League football and get home. This Istanbul side, I'm not that clued up on how good they are, but I'm told by probably about 50% of Burnley fans that they will be a tougher test than Aberdeen was, and then the other 50% say that they are nowhere near as good as Aberdeen. So let's go with a positive and let's say that we beat them. We've had the draw yesterday. We get drawn in the playoff, the final leg before we met the group stages between either Olympiacos or please forgive my terrible pronunciation, but it's a Swiss side called Levren, I believe it's called. Both of those are really tricky sides. I'm told that the Swiss side is actually stronger than the Greek side, so they'll probably get through. But so on one hand, you could say, well, it's going to be testing, it's going to test our squad, they're going to be tired. But should they be that tired in the early stages of the season? Should Premier League players who managed to finish 7th last season not be strong enough to beat some of the European leagues? I think with the exception of, I guess, Spain, Italy, Germany, the rest of the leagues in Europe shouldn't be anywhere near as strong as a Premier League, even if it is outside of the traditional top 6. So you weigh all of that up and you think, well, we could easily get past and get into the group stages, or we could maybe fall at the playoff stages if we get past Istanbul and not make it.
That happened to us a few seasons ago when we had Vitesse and lost to Midtjylland in the playoffs. But we're all about the right pronunciations on this show. I mean, Istanbul, Başak Şehir. How do you pronounce it?
I can't. I literally can't. I've been calling them Istanbul for 2 weeks, and that's good enough for me.
Nice and easy. You know, a lot of people have said that Burnley could struggle this season because, you know, if you do go on to the Europa League last stages, you know, they'll struggle in the Premier League with a very thin squad.
I think that's all about perception. I mean, what do you class as struggling? Let's be realistic here. Burnley probably shouldn't have finished 7th last season. It was a combination of Burnley playing very well and getting the points on the board, but also some, I guess, stronger sides who you'd expect to have seen between 7th and 10th. So Southampton, West Ham, Everton, they performed. I guess Leicester, I put Leicester in that category as well. They performed very poorly and we took advantage of that. So probably our natural position last season would have probably been about 10th or 11th. We took advantage of some poor performances and got that 7th place. So you look at that and you say, well, OK, that's maybe come a little bit earlier than we expected. It's perhaps too much too soon. But how can you not embrace the Europa League as a fantastic reward for what we did last season? How that affects our Premier League season remains to be seen. People are saying they're going to struggle this season. But when I've pressed people, and certainly journalists and I guess pundits, when they say, well, what do you mean we'll struggle? They say, well, you might only finish 14th or 15th. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take that. You know, that's not struggling for a side like Burnley. That's a really good progress.
It's safety, if we just isn't it? It's safety.
Yeah, it's safety. And for us, a successful season next season will be 17th in the Premier League and maintain our status. And I know that sounds potentially defeatist, but we're building something here and we are in the early stages of putting the club back in the top flight. And it's a really hard league to do that in. You never know anybody outside the top 6 can get relegated. Look at you guys last season. You managed to turn it around in the last few games, which was fantastic, but you could have easily gone down. It could have been you. Yeah. So, you know, you look at that and you think, well, you shouldn't take anything for granted. So for me, this whole idea that Burnley are going to struggle in the Premier League is just about perception. Yes, if we get relegated, then we will have struggled and we'll go down. If we stay up, successful season, done.
I mean, up until this week, Burnley were yet to make any signings. You know, I mentioned sort of very thin squad, but this week, 2 brand new additions to the squad. You know, Saundijk's a bit of a frustrated figure, but Ben Gibson has arrived on a deal worth 15 million. Of course, Saints were massively linked with over the summer, and as of today, on Tuesday, Joe Hart has signed for 3.5 million on a 2-year deal.
Yeah, it's very nice to get some bodies, and I've got to say, I think Burnley always do their transfer business late. We thought this season might be an exception because we knew we had Europa League fixtures to contend with. So we had some very early noise with a joint bid for Dawson and Jay Rodriguez from West Brom, both of which were turned down. So we honestly thought that we were going to, break trend and do early, but we haven't. We've left it late. We always leave late. Again, I've heard some commentators say that Burnley are going to get relegated because we left our transfer signings late. It's a little bit lazy, is that, because we do that every single season. We take our time over our deals. We get the right player in. Dyche doesn't operate a large squad. That's not the way he works. Our finances might dictate that we can spend money on transfer fees to get bodies in. But the problem for us is always going to be wages. We lost Mawson He was about to sign for us, and then went to Fulham in the last minute because Fulham over doubled the wages that we could offer him because they've got more money behind them than we do. And that's not being negative. That's not being, a little bit prickly about it. It's the reality. Burnley, aside from the Premier League money, doesn't have any other investment coming in that can help subsidise that television revenue. So we have to be careful. So I'm not necessarily concerned with the delay. Gibson I'm very excited about. He's a great player. I can't imagine Middlesbrough fans are particularly happy that he's come to us, but oh well. But it's an interesting one because Kevin Long's been a fantastic servant for the club and he's really pitched in when he's needed to, but he just hasn't got the same ability that Ben Mee, Tarkowski and Michael Keane had. So we've always operated with a 3-man central defence who are all really pushing for them. So to have Ben Mee, James Tarkowski and Gibson back in the ranks, I think will be really good for that central defence. And obviously we've already covered on Joe Hart. It goes without saying that that's an essential one. Pope's out long-term injured. Heaton's got a calf injury that's going to put him out for a couple of months, we believe. So Joe Hart will start in the nets against Southampton. And let's just hope that our goalkeeping staff have worked with him in enough time. Otherwise, you might have plenty of early birthday presents coming your way on Sunday.
Well, we hope so. We haven't won on an opening weekend in a few years, but you've teased me there already, leading me perfectly into our next question. The team news to play Saints. We know Nick Pope and Tom Heaton will not be fit, both of which will be ruled out. Who else can we expect to see from the tunnel on Sunday lunchtime? I fully expect that it will be the side that you saw in the Europa League fixture against Aberdeen. So we'll have Joe Hart. I suspect it will be Joe Hart in the nets. Anders Lindegaard hasn't quite proved himself in the Europa League ones. I think he's just slightly out of form. You'll see the same back four that we had last season. Stephen Ward at left back, me and Tarkowski in central defence, and Matt Lawton at the right. I expect you will see a midfield of Jack Cork and Ashley Westwood in the middle. You'll see Aaron Lennon on the right and Gudmundsson on the left, who will interchange wings. You'll see Chris Wood up front. I guess the only question mark will be who will play that number 10 role. He tends to alternate between, if he plays 4-5-1, it will either be Ashley Barnes or it will be Jeff Hendrick. Not a massive fan of Jeff Hendrick in that number 10 role, so I suspect he might stick with Barnes. Or he might decide to go 4-4-2 and stick Sam Vokes up front with Chris Wood. That's how he started at the Aberdeen game. So that's probably the only question mark. I think the rest of the team, you know what you're going to get from Burnley. It'll just be who plays up front with Chris Wood, I think. Yeah, those two up front sounds like it's going to cause all kinds of problems. Of course, last year, Sam Vokes popping up with a winner at St Mary's, big centre forwards, and hopefully our defenders have learnt a bit from last season. And one thing I want to finish off with as well, you said a successful season would be staying in the Premier League, but where do you think Burnley will finish this season? 10th. I think 10th or 11th. A lot of people are tipping us for relegation. I can't see that side with the same manager, the same players, the same coaching staff, the same drills. Why would they suddenly turn into a relegation side who can't win a game? I just, yes, even if we struggle, I think we've still got enough to stay out the bottom three. I say we won't finish 7th just because I think that some of the teams who I consider to have underperformed last season will step it up. Everton should get back to that natural 7th place. I expect Southampton will play better. West Ham will play better. Leicester, I'm not quite sure about yet. They seem to have a few niggles in the background, so maybe they might struggle. But let's say maybe Everton 7th, Southampton 8th, West Ham 9th, Burnley 10th, something like that, or any of those areas. So let's say 10th or 11th. I think we'll finish. 8th place for Saints. I'd absolutely take that. I think a popular opinion from our fans is that we'd finish anywhere between 10th and 15th for us. But really great to speak to you once again, Natalie. Where can we find you? You can find our podcast is the No No Never podcast, and you can find us at nononever.net. I'm Natalie Bromley, and you can find me on Twitter at Natalie_Bromley. Get in touch. So that wraps up then for this week's Big Match Build-Up Show. Do let us know what you think of the new long-form content. Leave us your predictions, your previews, any comments that you have on the usual social pages or in the YouTube comments section below. Go ahead and make sure you check out the Five Rivers this Sunday for some match day deals. And I'll also be outside St Mary's in the usual spot, at least for next week, for some fan reactions, also to be in next week's show. So leave us your thoughts, your predictions. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Come on, you Saints.